I'm going to show how to make a ground socket. Ground sockets can be used for plugging in posts, signs, mailboxes, flagpoles, or in my case, a game hoist and my park grill. I will be making mine out of 2-inch receiver tube that I bought at Harbor Freight. I wanted a 30-inch socket at least, so I bought the 18-inch and the 12-inch that I will weld together. Begin by choosing a location for digging a hole. I found that my weed eater did a great job for clearing a spot. Once clear, plan the size of hole that needs to be dug. A general rule is to make the hole 3 times the diameter of the socket's width. The depth needs to be deeper than the length in order to have a base of gravel in the hole. The receiver tube will sit on this base of gravel in the center of the hole with 1 inch exposed above the ground. The receiver tube will then be leveled and encased in concrete. Dig the hole to the planned dimensions using an auger or a post hole digger. Check your dimensions along the way using a tape measure until you've reached your goal. Next, prepare the receiver tube. Once again, I will be butt welding together an 18-inch receiver tube and a 12-inch receiver tube to create a total length of 30 inches. You could buy a 30-inch piece from a metal shop, but these were significantly less expensive. The male piece of square tubing that fits into the receiver I did have to buy at a metal shop. I will cut segments of this tubing and weld them onto the items that I will plug into my ground socket. Since the receiver tubes have factory paint, the areas that are welded will need to be prepped with a grinder. You definitely want good contact for a solid weld. Next, use the male square tubing to perfectly align the receiver ends in this manner. Then, clamp and weld the pieces together as seen here. As you continue on, reposition the receiver to finish the welds on all sides. Then, remove the receiver and set aside. Leave the male tubing in the vise. Make a temporary leveling post by clamping a long piece of angle iron to the male tubing. Once well secure, remove from the vise and set aside for later. This will be used when setting the receiver in concrete. Now clamp a cross member to the end of the receiver tube. Pick the end that you will designate as the top for the ground socket. This cross member will also help in positioning the receiver before adding the concrete. I find a scrap piece of angle iron works well for this. You will also need to cover the hitch pin holes with duct tape in order to keep concrete from entering the receiver. The bottom hitch pin hole can either be covered or place a piece of rebar through it if you're concerned about lift once concreted in. Next, return to the hole and add at least 4 inches of gravel to the bottom. Then set the receiver tube on top of the gravel base, positioning it in the center of the hole. Use duct tape to cover the opening of the receiver tube in order to keep it free of debris. Next, add a little more rock around the receiver into the hole. Add just enough until you can remove the end brace and the tube can stand on its own. Before pouring concrete, you will need to make post braces. Post braces are diagonal and horizontal supports used when leveling and stabilizing posts. I made mine out of scrap 1x2 lumber. One piece has a point on the end and will be staked in the ground, and the other piece will hinge on a screw. Make 2 of these and set aside for later. Next, return to the receiver and plug in the leveling post. Set up your post braces in this manner. Using a bubble level, manipulate the post into perfect level position and clamp into place as seen here. Repeat this on the other side. Double check for level and then prepare the concrete. I'm using Pro Finish 5000 concrete mix. I purchased this at our local hardware store. Simply follow the instructions on the back of the bag. I found that mixing small batches in an old 5-gallon bucket worked well. Mix until it has the consistency of thick oatmeal. Then it can be poured into the hole. Repeat mixing small batches and fill the hole to the top. Use a tamping rod or a small shovel to evenly distribute around the receiver. Don't worry if you see patches of dry mix. It will hydrate as you work it around the hole. Once again, make sure the leveling post is still level. Then allow the concrete to cure for 5 to 7 days. Once cured, remove the leveling post and your ground socket is ready to use.